Leibowitz describes endowing religions as beginning with certain values and then imposing requirements that will lead us to realize those values. Let's take Maimonides as an example, although Leibowitz, it should be noted, understands Maimonides rather differently and not surprisingly is having the same view as Leibowitz himself. Now, as we understood him, Maimonides has intellectual perfection as the purpose of humanity. The mitzvot then are there to bring us to intellectual perfection. Now, Leibowitz's problem with this form of religion is that it makes mitzvot a means to some human end. In a sense, therefore, it makes God into the servant of man, since God is moulding his commandments to certain human needs. This is the endowing religion of which Leibowitz speaks. By way of contrast, Judaism is a demanding religion, since it demands that we observe mitzvot and that we do so in the service of God, not in the service of ourselves. As Leibowitz writes, if the mitzvot are in the service of God, not of man, they may not be directed towards the satisfaction of human wants. We can make the distinction clear if we take the example of prayer. If you're praying for something, like doing well in a test or winning a game of football, say, then you're really just using prayer for your own selfish needs. Prayer becomes a means to your own satisfaction, which is to worship shelo lishma, not for its own sake, but for the sake of your own interests. You are, in a sense, worshipping yourself, not God. If, on the other hand, you're praying simply because God told you to, and not to get anything out of it. Imagine, for example, you don't really enjoy prayer, but you do it anyway because you have to, which is the case for some people, friends tell me. Then you're truly doing it lishma, for its own sake, and as an act of worshipping God, since you're getting nothing out of it yourself. That's a demanding religion, a religion that makes demands of us. As Leibowitz puts it, the question, what does religion offer me, must be completely dismissed. The only proper question is, what am I obligated to offer for the sake of religion? Indeed, for Leibowitz, Judaism simply is a religious value system. Again, recalling Mendelssohn up to a point, and also our first mini-lecture this week, Leibowitz sees Judaism as a system of values, presenting us with behavioral norms rather than factual beliefs about either God or the world. Now, for Leibowitz, such worship is the highest possible value, since God, not man, is the highest possible value. A mitzvot cannot transform us from our human condition to some higher realm of holiness. We're simply charged with the continuous service of God. Now, this has quite radical implications for the relationship between religion and ethics for Leibowitz. Ethics serves man. It is, to cite the term he uses, anthropocentric, or literally centered around man. Judaism, though, is theocentric, centered around God. So ethics and religion promote two different conceptions of value. As Leibowitz puts it, one is the theocentric view embodied by the Judaism of Torah, not, mind you, to serve man, reform society, redeem humanity, but to serve God. This is the entire meaning of Torah and mitzvot. A second axiological conception is the anthropocentric one, the view of man as pivotal. In effect, this is a view of man as God, and this is Kant's great idea, man as an end in himself. For Leibowitz, therefore, there's no question of what Abraham ought to have done at the Akedah. God's commands trump any ethical concerns. Abraham understood this, and rightly, indeed unhesitatingly, he obeyed God's demands. Berkowitz, by the way, would presumably have trouble with the Akedah and have to find some clever way to deal with it in a way that maintains the primacy of the ethical. So for Leibowitz, Judaism is a religion that demands worship of God through mitzvot that are not based on serving human needs. Finally, this week, it's worth mentioning that Leibowitz also has an interesting take on the idea of human freedom that connects to this view of ethics and mitzvot. Ethics for Leibowitz is a natural way for humans to act. We're following our natural desires in acting ethically, since, as ethics serves human interests. But that makes us a slave to our desires, no different from other animals who simply follow their nature. Mitzvot, however, are the way for man to be truly free. If we obey mitzvot, which, as we have seen, generally do not serve human needs or interests, then we've freed ourselves from being enslaved by our desires and by human nature. Then we're truly free. As Leibowitz puts it, Willing acceptance of a way of life which does not derive from human nature implies the emancipation of man from the bondage of raw nature. Man activated by his own nature is in effect nothing but a robot activated by the forces of nature, just like the cattle grazing in the pasture, which are also free from the Torah Mitzvot, that is, from any law externally imposed. Emancipation from the bondage of nature can only be brought about by the religion of Mitzvot. It cannot be accomplished by overcoming one's inclinations by rational or secular ethical considerations. Now this raises the following interesting question. Is ethics natural to human beings? Leibowitz clearly thinks so, which means that for him mitzvot are the only thing that can release us from being enslaved by our all too human nature, and that can allow us to transcend it. Ethics cannot. But here's a question to ponder. Is he right? Is ethics a natural expression of our humanity? Or does it maybe not come quite so naturally as he thinks?